Hi everybody, welcome to the garage. Peter Clayton is behind the camera. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. And speaking of the garage and the court of public opinion, this is the day in 1951, the very day. Oh, happy first of the month, by the way, November 1. 1951, November 1, the first Porsche arrived in Australia. It arrived in Melbourne. I mean, this wouldn't interest everybody, but one of them was a, oh golly, printer's so small, a 356 Cabriolet. It was silver. And the other one, there were two, there was a burgundy-coloured 356 coupe. Beautiful, beautiful cars. I've got a picture here. I can't show you. It's too small. It's out of an old newspaper. Very old newspaper. Kept it for years. It's a little like the spider that killed that guy. What was his name, Pete?
Oh, I can't.
You know, the actor who smashed his car up. He was only about 22 years of age.
Not James Dean?
James Dean. Yeah, that's
James
the guy.
Dean.
James Dean. Imagine killing yourself, but even worse, killing yourself in a Porsche Spider. Anyway, we had a lot of communications from people, and I will get to everyone, with regard to the Brumbies, the whalers up in the highlands of New South Wales, being mercilessly shot from helicopters because of some misadventure by the state government in New South Wales. I've had some very interesting correspondence, which I'll cover either today or tomorrow. And the other thing was that I think it was Maria rang me, and she took me to task about the exploding car in the carport. She said, "That's not an electric car. It's not electric. It's a gas car." No, because I stopped it down, or we stopped it down, Pete and I, and there's a cord coming out, electric cord coming out and going into a power point. You don't get that in a gas bottled car. No. But on top of that, Peter's found another slightly more dramatic.
Slightly more.
It's amazing. This is when two electric cars collide. Can we run that at the end of this?
At the end of the show, yes.
At the end of the show. We'll run this at the end of the show.
I'm a bit worried that Facebook might say it's too graphic, but I
well,
mean,
it's not too graphic. I don't see any bodies or anything. I mean, it's just basically a terrible incident on the freeway where two cars collide, and you don't see anything more than the after event, which is the batteries exploding in both the cars. It doesn't get any mention or coverage in the popular media for some strange reason. I don't get it. Now, here's something for each of the state Labor governments to contemplate. Now, we all know that the referendum didn't get up. But they say to themselves, hey, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Yes, Gary, thank you for drawing our attention to this. And I'll quote you. A state voice is invalid. So the state Labor government shouldn't try and inflict that upon the people, because the voice didn't get up in the referendum. They think a state-based legislated voice will be fine. Well, no. A state voice is invalid. Section 109 of the Australian Constitution, it says, when a law of a state is inconsistent with the law of the Commonwealth, the latter shall prevail, and the former shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be invalid. So, Mr. Malinauskas and others, unless you want to find yourself in the same very expensive position as the Victorians over the silly, invalid electric car tax, I would have a good look at Section 109 of the Australian Constitution. And speaking of that 2 cent a litre, 2 cent a kilometre tax on electric cars, see, they couldn't figure out how to impose a fuel tax on an electric car. You know? Anyway, they thought, okay, 2 cent per kilometre on electric cars. Well, that's what the Victorian government's imposed, and I think that's going back, at least 2-3 years. Kicked out by the High Court. You know how the states will want to replace the fuel tax. Maybe it's got to be the Commonwealth who does it. If these cars get more popular and, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not into them, but they seem to be selling, and from what I see and what people send me, also exploding. Anyway, we can understand that the federal government is going to want its chop. But how stupid. Only the feds can impose an excise. Now, what's going to happen will be that the feds will do it nationwide. I don't know if it's going to be 2 cents a kilometre, but anyway. The Victorians, however, theoretically, are going to have to repay all that tax collected since 2021. Ouch. Ouch, ouch. Unless they can think of some way around it. Unemployment is down slightly, 3.6%. 3.6%, that's good. Just think what this government could do, the feds and of course the states, because most of the states are Labor now. Just think what they could do if they just dropped the crap. Friday, for example, going back, paid parental leave has been given its greatest expansion by Labor. As I think I said on the dining room table when we were doing our live streaming show, why go to work at all? The push is on for a full 25 or 22 weeks a year of paid parental leave. 52 weeks a year. That's the whole year. Pardon me. And you have to keep that person's position open while still employing somebody to fill in. Now, I would ask the question, and I have been an employer, you'd have to ask yourself the question, why would you employ anyone of childbearing or parenting age? Because the expense is crippling. I mean, I've heard of, killing the goose that lays the golden egg. Speaking of killing things, somebody's done away with poor old Sarah Lee, you might have heard. It's been around for years and years. And I keep on hearing stuff like this, not just about Sarah Lee, but said by all sorts of people about all sorts of companies. They didn't move with the times. Really? Really? Well, maybe it was the 12-year-old in the marketing department. Or perhaps it was over-regulation. Or it was the on-costs, industrial laws, and complexities. But as I said, think what could be done for employment if we went back to a time when we had 0.03% unemployed. But you'd have to go back to before Whitlam for that. Lisa Wilkinson is suing Channel 10 over the legal bill that she ran up when she insisted, for some reason, on using her own legal team and not the one retained by the network. She employed her own team. $370,000. I understand Lisa is still under contract at 10 but hasn't worked this year. How does that work? Why would you keep somebody under contract and not give them something to do? Did Channel 10, Network 10, do anything wrong? Well, I mean, some terrible programming. including her old lefty show, The Project, of course, reality shows of which I'm not a fan. Oh well, what would I know? Forget it. Landbridge, a Chinese company with the obvious connections to the Chinese Communist Party, who inexplicably was allowed to lease the place for 99 years, that's the port of Darwin I'm talking about, will keep that position. After an Albanese government inquiry into the deal, it's an extraordinary finding, really, when you think about it. The Chinese, you know that TikTok thing, social media app, banned for Commonwealth workers. If you're an employee of the Commonwealth, you can't have TikTok on your mobile phone. Huawei, as a world huge telco, Chinese, banned. They couldn't even bid for the work on the 5G network. For some security reason, I can only assume. Chinese security cameras have been removed from Parliament House. There's talk about the solar receptors on roofs being somehow able to connect up to the Chinese Communist Party. It's all getting a bit silly, isn't it? But can anyone explain, with all of these precautions the federal government is taking with regard to security and firewalling themselves from the Chinese Communist Party, can anyone explain how the strategic northern Australian port of Darwin is okay to be in the hands of the Chinese, but nothing else? Does that make any sense to you? I've had a go at the South Australian Liberal Party, oh golly, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago I think it was. I told them to get some chutzpah, some profile, some energy, some personality. I got this on Friday, a little note telling me that the Liberals are fighting back. Very good, I thought, very good, fighting back. The story was, or media release, a shameless cash grab by the government. The Malinowskis government. And what was it? It seems Labor have increased the entry fee at the Botanical Gardens. The picnic tax grab, they called it. The picnic tax grab. Honestly, is that the best you can do as an opposition? Who the hell is advising you? And with everything you could be getting stuck into, everything, a picnic tax grab is the best you can do? Holy moly. Ooh. How much time have I got, Pete?
Well, as much as you want, really.
Just one more, perhaps. If you were listening to the Friday live streaming show from the dining room table a couple of weeks ago, you'd have met this wonderful man, Harry Young. Harry had just turned, a couple of days before he came on the show, he had just turned 100 years old. World War II fighter pilot, flew Spitfires, brilliant tennis player, only took it up when he was 60, a farmer by calling. He went off to Spain shortly after he came on my show for the ultimate championship, they billed it. Well, I'm happy to tell you that he again is grand champion. He beat his 96-year-old opponent, 6'2", 100 years and 1 month old he did. Not bad. Very good, in fact. Harry, we're proud of you. Keep it up. Now, I do want to show you a couple of things. One that Marcus sent me, and we'll get to that after we show you what happened on the freeway when 2 electric cars went boom. But just perhaps a couple of birthdays. November 1. Michelangelo's painting of the Sistine Chapel, first exhibited on this day in 1509, and people can go and look and see the very same sight all these years later. Wow. Convicts escape from Parramatta, and believe it or not, they attempt to walk to China. Must have seemed like a good idea at the time. Most were captured, some were killed. Britain says that all evidence indicates that Adolf Hitler killed himself in the Berlin bunker. This day in 1945 they said that. Phil Silvers died. He was 73. Most remembered for Sergeant Bilko in the Phil Silvers Show. Died this day in 1985. Robin the Boy Wonder died in DC Comics Batman issue number 428. Killed by the Joker after a reader's poll voted they should get rid of him. Wow, they're so unkind. They're not. Anyway, what else? Mining stopped at the Wallaroo mines in 1923. Jack Davy was born in Auckland. The great Jack Davy, hi-ho everybody, in 1910. Hi-ho, he was famous for that. Hi-ho everybody, he used to say. Kiss arrived in Australia in 1980. The first 300 Zeta cars were produced by the Lightburn factory in Nova Gardens on this day in 1962, and one more, 1895, the first motoring association, the American Motor League, was founded in Chicago, Illinois. Now, are we going to show the bang first?
No, leave that till last in case I have to cut it off.
Okay, well, you got to stay to the end just to see the bang. It's worth seeing.
It is.
It's better than bonfire night, better than cracker night. But this is a clip that Marcus sent to me, and I found it very interesting. Thanks for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back tomorrow with more stuff here. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Have a look.
How many times have you heard that Israel occupies the West Bank? Probably more times than you can count. But have you ever asked yourself whether it's true, or even what it means? Let's do so now in the most objective way possible. That is, in the way that all territorial questions everywhere else in the world are resolved. To do this, we must look at the law. But first, we need a little history. Up until 100 years ago, the areas now called Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and all the countries around them were part of the Ottoman Empire, which ruled over a vast area and many peoples. Neither the Jews nor those Arabs we now call Palestinians had a state, though the Jews had a nationalist movement calling for one. Everything changed after World War I. The Ottomans fought on the losing side with Germany. By the end of the war in 1918, their empire had disintegrated, leaving the British and French in control of much of its territory. In earlier times, the victors would likely have kept this land as colonies for themselves, but there was a new spirit of democracy in the air. The Allies, including the British, French, and Americans, agreed that the former Ottoman lands should be allowed to become independent nation-states. After the war, the nations of the world created the League of Nations, a precursor to the United Nations. Meeting in San Remo, Italy in 1920, they set up what was known as the Mandate System. The colonies of the defeated powers, Germany and the Ottoman Empire, were converted into distinct geopolitical entities, which became the countries now known as Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. None of this is controversial. There was one other mandate issued, the Mandate for Palestine. Now, Palestine was merely a geographic label, the name the Romans gave the Jewish kingdom of Judea after they conquered it. There was nothing exclusively Arab about it. The mandate provided that Palestine would become a national home for the Jewish people. There was a simple reason for this. The League recognized that Jews were the indigenous people of the area. All the mandatory territories in the Middle East transitioned to statehood in the 1930s and 40s, with Israel the last to do so, declaring independence in May 1948. Now we get to the legal stuff. What were the borders of the State of Israel when it declared independence? International law has a simple and universally applicable rule for determining borders of new countries. It's called the uti possidetis juris principle. Lawyers love Latin phrases. The rule provides that when a new country is created, its borders match the borders of the previous geopolitical entity in that territory. For example, the borders of Ukraine, Latvia, and Azerbaijan are exactly what they were when they were parts of the Soviet Union. Other considerations, such as demographics, are not taken into account, because without a simple, easily applied rule, a new country's borders would never be settled. A recipe for permanent conflict. Applying this rule to Israel means that it had sovereign claims to all of Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and Gaza, because those were its borders according to the Mandate of Palestine. To be sure, the United Nations proposed a resolution in 1947 with different borders and a much smaller area for a Jewish state. But that resolution was a non-binding recommendation, nothing more. It did not have the force of law. We know what happened next. Upon declaring independence, Israel was immediately invaded by 5 Arab armies seeking to destroy it. Israel survived, but Jordan managed to seize parts of Jerusalem, as well as Judea and Samaria, which it dubbed the West Bank. All the Jews living in these areas were expelled, or to use the contemporary term, ethnically cleansed. Here, we need to introduce another key principle of international law. A war of aggression cannot be used to change another country's borders. Israel and Jordan signed an armistice agreement in 1949, an agreement to temporarily stop fighting. This truce had no legal effect on borders. When Israel liberated these territories in 1967 during the Six-Day War, it was retaking its own land. You can't occupy land that belongs to you. So where are we now? In 1994, the Palestinian Authority was established as part of the Oslo Accords. Israel didn't have to agree to this, but it did. While not being a sovereign state, the PA operates independently of Israel. The PA, not Israel, governs the lives of Palestinians living in the West Bank. Israel has offered the Palestinians a fully independent state on several occasions. Each time, the Palestinians have rejected the offer, something no other national independence movement in modern times has done. Whether or not it makes sense for Israel to renew such offers is an open question, but it's under no legal obligation to do so. I'm Eugene Kontorovich, professor of law at George Mason University, for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.